Supervisor wouldn't let me come in 1 hour early, so I worked hard enough that she and the entire sector didn't get raises that year. Which meant they were 5% behind peers for salary for the rest of their careers, by user Picaolib 64151. Background: the police department that I worked for set a policy that patrol officers were evaluated based on their daily activity. Can't set quotas, etc., etc. So an officer is compared to all of the officers working under the same sector sergeant. The stats are compiled each month. Basically, you had to be within 10% of the sector average. If your sector averaged 10 marks of activity per day, you could average as low as 9 or as high as 11 and you were fine. Sector averages varied across geography and time of day. It was also pretty easy to stay within those parameters. My previous sector averaged 15 per day. Meet the goals and you get your yearly step increase, which is typically 5%. Miss those goals and you're a step behind your peers. Forever. This also translated to your overtime rate, which was a big portion of most officers' annual income. Let's say you're at $30/HR and getting about 500 hours of overtime each year. That's about $62,400 base pay and another $22,500 in overtime for an annual salary of $84,900. Get your 5% step increase and the same amount of work will net you $65,520 in base, $23,625 in overtime, and an annual salary of $89,145. Miss the step increase and you are still making $84,900, while your peers are making $4,245 more. This also translates to similar gains in pension, 401k, 457k, and IRA contributions, yada, yada. I received a hardship transfer to day's shift due to my son staying with me for the summer. It was only for 6 weeks. The hardship was that if I didn't get the transfer, I would have to find childcare during the evening, which would have cost me about $5,000 for the 6 weeks. My lieutenant assures me that I will be put on the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift as my wife works the 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. shift. This lets us trade off with my son and everyone is happy. Enter my new day's shift sergeant. The sergeant was a slug, read, lazy, do-nothing supervisor, drawing a paycheck and only looking out for themselves. The sergeant puts me on the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift. I approached her and ran through my story and advised her I was told by the lieutenants that I would be on the 7 to 3 shift. She laughed at me and said, "That's what babysitters are for." Okay. Fine. Enter the malicious compliance. The sector average for this sergeant was 7. You could literally get a 7 before you left the parking lot for your patrol shift. It wasn't a difficult achievement. I started getting daily activity of about 60 to 70 marks. A mark was just a tally mark next to a category of work. I was basically doing more work than the entire section combined every single day. After a week of this, she comes to me and tells me I'm doing too much. Tells me that I'm destroying the sector average and it's going to wreck my review. She didn't mention that it also wrecks her review and all of the officers under her. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Well, Sergeant, I just have so much energy because I get to sleep an extra hour. I just have to do something with that energy or I will go crazy." I let that sink in for a moment and then add, if I had to get up earlier, like at 5:30, to be here at 7 a.m., I probably wouldn't have very much energy since I wouldn't be getting as much sleep. I kept working at the same pace for the rest of the month, effectively destroying the sector's average to the point where she didn't get her raise. Side note, yes, I also screwed all 6 officers that worked under her out of their raises, too. Funny thing about slug sergeants, they attract slug officers. Her sector has a terrible reputation for not being worth a damn. I didn't feel bad one bit. Nor did anyone else that had to pick up their slack on the day shift. I got picked up for a special assignment after the first month and transferred to HQ for about 4 years. My evaluation was based on entirely different metrics that year. I not only got my raise, but I got a promotion as well. TL/DR, supervisor wouldn't put me on a shift that met my hardship needs. So I worked hard enough that the supervisor lost her step increase and made between $5K $8K less than her peers for the rest of her career. No wife of mine will ever wear pants, by user BlueJabe. This is an older story, but one of my favorites. When girls started wearing slacks, my great-grandmother told her husband, my great-grandfather, that she wanted to get some slacks. He blew up insisting that no wife of his will ever wear pants. She could have argued, but she accepted his edict quietly. Until they went bowling. She found the shortest skirt she could find. After all, he insisted she keep wearing skirts and dresses. This was in the 50s. That night, he agreed to let her get slacks. Side note, she would also sew shut the flaps on his long underwear when she was mad at him. Company refuses to pay me overtime. I left job site with job incomplete and client unhappy, by user Snooppickles 1731. This happened years ago, when I was just starting to wake up to companies abusing employees, and employees taking it cause they are just thankful to have a job. I worked as a sales rep for a company in the technology field. Two-way radios and alarms to be specific. Said company never had enough technical staff, so I started training myself, and asked our lead technician to teach me to program and sort out minor problems, as well as do installations. Which was nice, since I was doing client visits 1 to 4 times a month, depending on how big the client was, and then I could sort out problems while I was on site. I ended up doing most of my clients' installations, and the manager of the technical department was happy cause it's less work for him, and he knows I do the jobs properly cause I want to keep my clients happy. Accordingly, he had no problem signing my timesheets and overtime hours as well. OT was around 10 to 20 hours a month, so 2 to 5 hours a week. Which I think was a great deal considering I was doing the jobs of 2 people actually. It went well for a few months until one day just before payday I get called in by the MD/owner. He had my timesheets for the past few months in front of him. He asked me what they were, and I gave him an explanation. He scratched my OT out, saying sales reps don't get paid OT. I tried to explain to him why I was claiming OT, and that he can ask the tech manager, but he was having none of it. I was pissed as it was a little extra money, but whatever. About a week later I was at a client about 160 km, 100 miles, from the office. We had an big installation and was almost done except for programming and tidying up some cables. I checked the time, and told the apprentice technician to pack up. He was like, but we are not done with the job. I told him I don't care, I don't get paid OT, it's 2 p.m. and it's still a 2-hour drive back to the office. We packed up, client comes out and I gave him the explanation, saying we will be back the following morning, to finish what was effectively 30 to 45 minutes of work. Client wasn't happy, but understands that I don't get paid to work late. I was on the road about 15 minutes when my phone rings. It was the owner, same one that said I don't get paid OT. He asked what was I doing and why I wasn't finishing the job, as the client was not happy. I told him the explanation above, and then I said that he said I don't get paid overtime, so I'm not working late, and will drive back to finish tomorrow. Silence for about 5 seconds as I assume he realized I was following his express instructions, and there was nothing he could do. He told me to go back and finish the job and we can talk about it later. I told him no, unless he pays me OT. He says he will. I tell him to put it in an email before I will turn back. I could hear him go red in the face. He said he will send it now. I switched on my laptop, connected my dongle. This was still before smartphones and email on out phones. A few minutes later the email came through, we turned around and finished the job. I got paid my overtime, and never again was there a query over my timesheets or hours booked. I was the only rep out of 5 that got paid overtime. Edit for more info. This has blown up to where I can't answer all the questions or reply to all the comments. Thanks for the awards and wholesome replies. If I don't reply to your comment, nothing personal, I will try reply to as many I can in between work. I will answer some common questions on here for clarity. This happened in South Africa. The labor board there is not very efficient, especially if it comes to smaller companies. Also, this employer had extensive government contracts, and knew a lot of people personally. So even reporting him would not have helped much. And if they do investigate, it's pretty easy to get the investigation squashed with a bribe. My contract stipulated I was not entitled to OT. I negotiated OT with the technical manager as it would be mutually beneficial for both him and me if I did tech work as well, and ultimately the company would save money as well, so he agreed to it without any objections. The OT did not amount to much every month as it was based on basic salary, which was low. Commission made up 3/4 of my take-home pay, excl allowances. So it wasn't much about the money, more about the principle. Other sales reps refused to do tech work as they said that was not why they were appointed. The other guys also were on the wrong side of 40 and in shape. If you can call round a shape. I was in my early 20s and wanted to get ahead, so I did extra to prove myself. The OT that he scratched put did not get paid. At least not to his knowing. I added extra hours over the next 2 months to make up for that, so I did get paid eventually. This happened in 08, so before smartphones and voice recording etc. My work phone was a Nokia that had no internet ability. I could call and text. Don't think it even had a camera. We connected to the internet on our laptops via a dongle. It is a device that takes a SIM card, plugs into the USB port and then connects to the cell network. Almost like dial-up internet. It even made a similar sound. My laptop did not even have Wi-Fi. If I wanted to connect at the office I had to plug in the LAN cable. My job tried to charge me for personal calls on my work phone even though I had an unlimited plan, by user Josai but farts. So I need to preface this by saying this happened a long time ago. Like back when cell phone plans had minutes. I was working as a contractor in a hospital for a medical supply company. I was in a team lead kind of role in a small department, supervising about 20 people total. Part of my job description was to carry around a departmental cell phone at all times, even though I was an hourly employee. Kind of a bogus deal, but whatever. Employees would call me whenever, 24/7 for troubleshooting or if they were calling in sick. I never got paid for these phone calls, but to me at the time it wasn't a big deal. This particular area was also in the mountains, and I didn't always get the greatest reception with my T-Mobile phone. I got great reception with my work phone, so every once in a while I'd use it for personal use. After about a year of this I get an email from my boss's secretary asking me to pay for each of the calls I made. I said sure, send me the phone records. After that, I went through the phone records over the past year and saw I'd used it maybe 10% of the time for personal calls. After adding everything up, I emailed her back. I added everything up, and turns out I owe you guys X amount of dollars for my personal calls. Technically, I'm an hourly employee, so I should be getting overtime each time I pick up the phone for work purposes. Will we just subtract the difference for all those hours owed? I never heard back. I didn't push it and they didn't either. How much water do you want, exactly, by user-controlled 01. TLDR customer shows us to ignore simple procedure and receives 800 gallons of water in their living room. I deliver bulk water to people who don't have access to city water or their own private well. For nearly all customers it's a simple process, either they call for deliveries, or they have agreed to automatic deliveries. When I show up, I hook the truck up to the fill pipe and start pumping and either listen at the vent or hook up to an installed alarm in order to know when the holding tank is full. This particular customer had their holding tank installed in a small utility room next to their living room and didn't install a vent to the outside, and refused to allow us to install an alarm because they didn't want us to put the 1/4 inch hole in the wall to run the alarm wire. Solution? They call when they need 2,000 gallons of water and we show up and pump exactly 2,000 gallons of water. This procedure worked without flaw for over a decade. Literally hundreds of deliveries with no issue. Owner deciding to sell. We are contacted by the new owners and set them up as a new account and head over for our first delivery and meeting. We especially go over the issue with us being totally unable to tell when the tank is full. We offered to install the alarm again for free, but they declined. So we let them know when they call for water they must be sure they have enough room in the tank for 2,000 gal. Or to let us know how much water they have room for. We went over this several times and they laughed saying they understood and would be calling when they were below the 2,000 gallon mark. 2 weeks go by, and we receive a message on our answering machine from the new customer, no gallon amount is specified. This set off a warning bell though because it was a household of 2, and it's only been 2 weeks since we filled them last. That's highly abnormal. We expected more like 5 weeks. So we call back just to double check. No answer, so we leave a message asking for confirmation. Couple hours later we try again. By the next day we had left 4 messages asking to confirm that they were ready for a full load. No reply. Well, they did call, so boss sends me out. I knock on door as a last attempt, still no answer, so I hook up, start the pump and set the timer so I don't overpump while reading my book. 15 minutes later I hop out to check the water meter, 1,700 gallons. I'll watch for the next couple minutes and shut it down. That's when I hear the front door burst open and the woman who bought the house and had called us in yesterday is screaming to shut the water down. There is water everywhere. What the hell are we doing? This woman has been ignoring our calls and even ignored me at her door, and now she is screaming at me. Apparently she had called when the tank was half full instead of down below the mark showing where the 2,000 gallons is. And just disregarded all our messages and didn't feel like talking to me when I knocked. So now she has 700 plus gallons of water in her living room. Boss was called out so she could scream at him. Husband came home from work so he too could scream at us, for reasons I guess. They made a lot of demands about how we were going to pay to fix it. Nope. Boss laid down how we saw the situation. You can keep the water free of charge, just don't call us for water anymore. Y'all are too stupid to work with. Never heard from them again. LOL broken heart.